listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Hello, and welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is award-winning author JDR Hawkins, who has written a 3-book Renegade series, and the most recent one is called A Beautiful Glittering Lie, which was released in May of 2017. And an interesting fact about Julie is that she's only one of a few female Civil War authors. Welcome, Julie. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, Julie, how did you get interested in writing?
Well, I've been a writer all my life, pretty much. I started writing poetry and songs when I was just a little girl. And then, it kind of advanced. It kind of went along with the age my children were. Oh. When my kids were little, I started writing children's books. And as they grew older, I advanced to young adult. And A Beautiful Glittering Lie and the Renegade series, these are the first novels that I've written. Actually, the second book in the series, and this is going to be a little confusing, but the second book in the series was the first novel I had written in the series. And I was inspired to write it when I went to Gettysburg. I'm from Iowa, but I've lived in Colorado most of my life, so I'd never really seen a Civil War battlefield before.
Oh, okay.
And so when I went to see Gettysburg, it's like the daddy of all Civil War battlefields.
Yeah. It is, yes.
So I was really moved by it, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if I wrote a book about a common Southern soldier, because nobody's ever really done that before that I knew of.
Okay. So
I wrote A Beckoning Hellfire, and it got to be too long, so I split it into 2 books, so it became A Beckoning Hellfire and A Rebel Among Us. And then I wrote a 3rd book in the series, which has yet to be published. And then I went back and wrote the prequel, which is A Beautiful Glittering Lie.
Wow.
So right now there are 4 books in the series. The first 3 have been published. The first book, A Beautiful Glittering Lie, as you said, just got republished last month. And then A Rebel Among Us got published last September.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's pretty cool.
So were you a history major in college? How did you know about the Civil War?
No, I didn't care about history in high school at all. I was more interested in boys at that point. but I guess it kind of sparked an interest in me when we moved out here to Colorado, because I was just fascinated with the whole Victorian era and all the old mining towns and things like that. And then we went to the Molly Brown house in Denver, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I guess I've always kind of had an interest in that particular time period.
And then actually going to Gettysburg really inspired you about that.
Yeah, it did, and then I got to thinking, well, why would every Southern soldier fight for such a terrible thing as the preservation of slavery? That didn't make sense to me at all. Mm-hmm. Well, so I started doing my own research and discovered that wasn't the case. That was an underlying issue of the Civil War, but that wasn't the main reason the war was fought by any means. And most Southern soldiers fought it to preserve their homes because they were being invaded. Only 6% of Southerners owned slaves at that point.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
And a lot of Northerners owned slaves, And there were northern states that allowed slavery.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of crossover. It wasn't as black and white as the history books try to make it today.
Interesting. That's good. So you're learning history as you're writing. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, exactly.
And then educating people through your books.
And that's what I tried to do. I tried to make it from the Southern perspective so that they would come to understand what I did as far as why a typical Southern soldier would fight in the war.
Okay, great.
And so how are your book sales in the Southern United States?
Well, as far as I know, they're doing great all over internationally.
Great.
Yeah, I wish I had a chance to go down south and do a book tour. I might do that later this year or next. I have a nonfiction book coming out next month
Wow, you're
about,
busy.
yeah, about Confederate war horses. So
Oh,
that was a fun book to write, a little bit different, still
yeah.
along the same vein
Yeah.
historically, but it concentrates on horses. And it's really kind of fascinating when you start reading about these animals and how brave they were and all the pain and suffering they went through,
Oh.
Oh, I bet.
Well,
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting. This one trip to Gettysburg, it has created a new path of your life.
Yeah, exactly. And that was such a fluky thing too, because I was collecting these little toys, and so there was this toy store in Glenwood Springs up in the mountains that we went to one summer, and they were running this contest, this toy company that made Boyd's Bears out of
Oh,
Gettysburg. And so I entered the contest just for fun. Well, I got a phone call, and I was one of the winners.
wow.
That's neat.
So they flew us out there. They
Oh.
picked us up in a limousine at the
How
My
fun.
gosh.
the airport, drove us out, and it was a blast. I
Oh.
mean, it was the most fun thing, and it was just amazing that they were so hospitable and everything. But then that was the first chance I'd ever gotten to go anywhere.
Well, that's
east.
good. So people really win, because sometimes you wonder, do people really win those contests?
When you see the contest on the back of
Oh,
a bag of potato chips,
yeah.
and you're like, who's going to win that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was just a God thing, because why else would I win and then be inspired to write
Yeah.
this thing?
Right.
I mean, it was just a weird thing. But, and then after I decided to write A Beckoning Hellfire, I talked my husband into going back out there because I wanted to make sure I got all the details right as far as the scenery and everything, because I was basing my research strictly off books and pictures because I was in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So we went back out there, and we went to Virginia and all these battlefields that are mentioned in my book. And fortunately, I was pretty accurate there. So
Great.
So the book was already written by the time when you went there, or you visited the
Yeah.
battlefields? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I already written it. I'm like, well, I better make sure I've got this right before I try to publish it. Or
Well, what about the writing process? Did you have days when you were just like, I can't do this? Or did it all come, like once you had your idea, it came to you naturally? Or did you struggle? What was your process?
Well, once I got the idea, I kind of did a little bit of research. I didn't really know at first where the soldier would originate from. And then I thought, I just kind of looked at a map, and this is going to sound kind of weird too, but I found a little tiny town in Alabama named Ryan Crossroads. Well, my maiden name is Ryan.
Oh,
So I thought, that's it.
yeah,
That's where he's
yeah.
going to be from. And the story just works so well around it, because he's from North Alabama, and Alabama was in the war the entire way. They were one of the states that enlisted the most men
Oh,
in the
okay.
South.
Well, what about finding a publisher? What was that process like?
Well, when I first wrote A Beckoning Hellfire, I thought it might be the best for me, since I was starting out. I hadn't really gotten anything else published except for poetry and stuff like that, songs, but not a novel. So I thought, well, I'll self-publish, and that'll give me a chance to really learn how the industry works and everything. So I published it through iUniverse, and then I published A Beautiful Glittering Lie through iUniverse as well. And then I was going to publish A Rebel Among Us with this new company. It was called Book Trope, and it was strictly an online company. But right before my book was ready to go be released, the company folded.
Oh,
geez.
no.
Yeah, and that actually happened with my nonfiction book too, which
Oh.
was kind of weird. But anyway, so I'm an associate member of the United Daughters of the Confederacy. Just because I write about the Civil War, they
Oh.
kind of put me under their wing.
Oh, that's nice.
Very
And
nice.
my husband got transferred down to Memphis for a few years, so we were living in Mississippi for 5 years, and that's how they found out about me. I had a book signing down there,
Oh.
and this sweet little old lady at the museum in Hernando, Mississippi, told me to contact some people, and they'd show up to my book signing all dressed out in their Civil War attire.
Oh.
That's a nice
And they
addition.
did too, and then we got to be friends, and they invited me to become a member. So I've been a member ever since,
Wow.
even though I don't have any ancestors that were in the
Yeah.
Civil War.
That's neat.
So my husband, I kind of roped him into the whole thing too. So he became a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. And they did some research and found out he actually had a Confederate ancestor.
Wow. This is really
Great
cool.
grandfather. So yeah, it's amazing what you find out if you do some ancestry research. But anyway, so they found out that he had this ancestor, and then they have this publication newsletter that they put out every month. And in it was this advertisement for a brand new startup publishing company in Mississippi. So I contacted them, and they jumped all over my book right away.
Great.
And so they published Rebel Among Us last September, and then they republished A Beautiful Glittering Lie last month, and they're going to do Beckoning Hellfire. And I know it sounds confusing because the books are all published out of sequence, but the story goes in sequence, so it makes sense. They're all standalone novels, but they also are sequential.
Okay, so things were published twice then. So first you did it through your self-publishing, and now you're republishing through this publishing company out of Mississippi.
Exactly.
Oh, well,
And
that's
they're-
great. So a whole new
Yeah,
audience too, I would think.
Yeah, and they've got a great team put together. They've got a wonderful artist, Dawn Dominique. She's done the covers for 2 of my books now and working on the 3rd. And a great marketing team, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to be. Yeah, I'm really happy with them.
Did they
They're
change?
great.
Did they change the book much when they published it?
I had the chance to do a little editing, so they're just minor changes, but nothing significant.
And you've been happy with you've had a say in the process, like with the book cover and everything?
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
So tell us a little bit about iUniverse? Is that what you said the publishing company was? The first one you used?
Yeah, iUniverse is a self-publishing company out of Indiana. They're a good place to start for me because they helped walk me through the whole process. They provided an editor. I got the opportunity to have a lot more freedom. When you self-publish, you have a lot more freedom as far as what you want on the cover and what you want in the book, things like that. Like if you go to a traditional publisher, a lot of times they'll cut chapters and things like that.
Oh, okay.
Which hasn't happened in my case, but like with the Big 5, I've heard that happen a lot. But with the first 2 books, I chose the artist's works to be on the covers. And now it's a whole new artist, and since it's a series, we're going with a similar look. So that's why we're redoing the covers.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. But with my nonfiction book, it's called Horses in Gray. And I got to choose the artist for that. His name's Dan Nance. He's a magnificent Civil War artist. If you get a chance to look at his work, by all means do so.
Okay, we'll look them up.
Yeah. And that book's coming out with Pelican Publishing.
Oh, great.
It's a more of a traditional publisher. It's been around a lot longer and stuff. So
You mentioned that you did a book signing. How else are you marketing your books?
a lot of online stuff right now. We just moved back to Colorado, and this is kind of weird too because we lived here most of our lives, but then my husband got transferred, like I said, to Memphis for 5 years. Then we moved back to Colorado for 8 months. Then we were in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for the past 3 years.
Wow.
And he got transferred a lot there for a while. And now we're back in Colorado. We just got back last fall. So I'm not to the point yet where I'm ready to actually go out and do book signings. I'm waiting for A Beckoning Hellfire to be republished first, and then I'm going to take the whole series out, as well as Horses in Gray. That, like I said, that doesn't come out till next month. So I'll probably set up more local events this fall.
Okay.
But I'm doing a lot of online stuff like giveaways, on Goodreads and Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I did a blog tour, and just, a lot of internet type stuff, social media.
Good.
And that
Right.
kind of thing. So, yeah, that's what I've been concentrating on most recently, as far as trying to get reviews and things like that, too. And, just get more visibility for my books online. So.
And what do you think gives you the most visibility? Is it Facebook or is it Pinterest or?
I don't know. I don't use everything. I mostly use Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of Instagram, but not a whole lot. I'd have to say Twitter and Facebook are probably the most visible for me. I have a blog as well that I write on a couple times a week. I write about my writing process and interviews I do online and things like that. And that's all associated with my website, which is jdrhawkins.com.
Oh, very cool. So do you have any advice for authors who might be listening who are, thinking about writing or working on a novel or working on a nonfiction book?
Be passionate about it. Don't write about something just because it's the popular in thing. I mean, sure, you can make money at it, like
Mm-hmm.
50 Shades of Grey or something.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, writing is a passion and it's an important part of my life. So I write about things that I feel passionate about, and not necessarily the Civil War, but the Southern perspective of it I feel passionate about, because people growing up in Iowa and stuff, people don't know the Southern perspective. We're not taught that in school. So I write about stuff that I'm passionate about. I love horses. I wrote a book about that. I have a young adult book I wrote that I have yet to get published about my hometown, Sioux City, during Prohibition, and it's loosely based on my great aunt and uncle.
Oh.
And they ran a hotel downtown, and supposedly there was a lot of gangster activity going in and out and all this type of thing. So I've written a book about that. I haven't published it yet, but I just write about things that I have fun writing about and I feel passionate about, because then it's easier to get into the story. It's easier to do the research because you're really interested in it.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a lot of research involved with historical.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. It's not like a chore, right? You're not thinking it's hanging over my head, oh, I've got to do that. It's something I want to do. So it's more of a hobby than a chore.
Yeah, whereas a lot of like chick lit and stuff like that, they're fun to read, but it's easy to write too, because it's just a plot line, or a couple of subplots. There's not a lot of research that goes into them usually,
Right.
At least not to this extent, things like
Yeah.
that. So that would be my advice, first of all. And second of all, don't give up. Just keep at it. Keep at it. Try and write every day.
Yeah. What about people saying, "Oh, why are you doing this? No one's going to read it, or no one's going to publish it." Did you ever have anybody maybe discourage you, or was everyone very supportive?
Nobody was harder on me than myself.
Okay.
I thought, like, why am I doing this? Nobody's going to care.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I won some awards, it was, like verification that I was doing something.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. But some people can't get past their own negativity, I guess. So we just want to hope that people will try. Like Matt always says to our kids about anything, the answer is always no. So you might until you ask. So even if they say no after you ask, there's at least a possibility of a yes. So try, But
Exactly.
But sometimes people can't. They're just too afraid to try, and that's what we hope, that someone listens to this and just tries. Everyone's just trying to write their story or whatever, and just trying to make their way through life.
Exactly.
Fight that fear of failure.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody has that, I think, but you'll never know unless you try, so just go for it is my advice. Don't let
Right.
anything hold you back. I mean, if it's something you want to do that's important to you and you're passionate about, by all means, go for it.
Right.
Great. And then how can our audience members get in touch with you?
You can go to my website. There's a link there to my email account, or you can send something directly to me through my blog, and write comments. I love it when people comment about my blog because
Yes.
I know there are people out there that read it, but they don't comment. I'm like, come on, people.
Yeah, right,
What is
right.
it here? But yeah, those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
Okay. And
You
then,
can also reach me through my publisher, which is Foundations LLC. They're the ones in Mississippi I was talking about.
oh, okay, good. And then
Yeah.
what about purchasing your book?
My book's available everywhere, basically.
Isn't that
It's,
nice? That's
Yeah.
great.
That's a nice thing to be able to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. You can get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can order them into brick and mortar stores directly if you want a hard copy, or they're available in ebooks just anywhere.
Oh,
And there are I have a bunch of links on my website as well.
So if I went to my local bookstore, you're saying you could request it and then they can purchase it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Okay.
can
And then that
order it.
helps them because, yeah, okay, good. Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also have a list of links if anybody wants to follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera. All my links are listed on my website too. So
And we'll have that in our show notes.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you. We really do appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today.
thank you very much for having me.
Sure.
Really enjoyed it.
If there's a particular episode that you really like of The Author Inside You, please consider
Leaving us a review on iTunes. And thanks for listening to this episode of the Author Inside You podcast. And until next time,
Right On.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.